a little bit about Lucia. She's been with the city about 11 years, and in her current role for about 5. Just learned at an update that she has 68 people in her area of responsibility. And I can tell you by looking at her weekly report, which is I don't know, 37 pages or something like that. Projects she and her team managers. I've said this before, I don't know how you keep track of this stuff. Lucy and I share a little bit in common. We both lived in the San Diego area for a period of time. She's originally from Arizona. And we try and work closely with her planners in trying to get better outcomes or good outcomes for our city. So, Lucia, thank you for what you do, and please take away with your remarks, and then we'll get into questions.
Great, thank you. Would you like me to stand up or?
Whatever you prefer. It's a fisheye camera, so you can kind of do this as you would wish.
All right, I'll just stand up here. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So thank you for having me here, first of all. I love being out. I do have a mic. I do, love being out in the community, having this opportunity to come and talk and share about what we're doing and answer any questions that you guys may have. So thank you for this opportunity. So a few updates from the last time I was here, a few personnel updates. Our general manager, I believe last time I was here was Myra or Kevin. We had a little bit of turnover for a certain time. Now it's Allison Christie. I'm sure a lot of you have talked to her or have heard about her, but she started January of 24, she was in the position, started in the position January of 24. She came from the city of Northport as a planner, came as a chief planner, and then got into the general manager position January of 24. She's a certified planner, and she holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and a master's in urban planning. So she is a great asset to our department. If you guys haven't met her, I would really encourage you to meet her and to talk to her. We are currently recruiting all 4 planners positions that we have. I know the planners are probably one of our most public-facing positions that we have. So we have actually, let me take that back because we just made an offer yesterday and just got approved. Rebecca Webster from the planning department has accepted the chief planner position in our department. So she will be on board later this month. So we're really excited to have her. And then we are currently recruiting for a senior planner and then 2 planner positions. So within hopefully the next couple months, you guys will see new faces and names that come up on the development applications that everyone follows.
Is it hard to find people these days?
It has been very difficult. Yes. We've had a challenge for a little while.
Because of affordability in Sarasota?
I think so. Yeah, we've had quite a few people from out of state, decline once they start looking at housing and things like that. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think we're on the right track now of getting our positions filled. So I'm feeling good about that. We're also recruiting for a senior arborist. Our current senior arborist is going to leave the middle of July. So we're currently recruiting for a senior arborist and a flood zone specialist. Our flood zone specialist currently will be leaving in January.
Yeah.
So luckily for that position, we have a good amount of time to recruit and train, because that's just like these other positions, very important positions. He's retiring, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Email
he's been
him.
with us for a little while. We're
So
really
I'm
sad to
not
see him leave,
doing the
but
first group,
I believe that he's going to retire. He has grandkids and he wants to focus
I
on
guess I
that.
can just let them know. Go.
Another personnel
Like,
update, my assistant, some of you guys have met her, Angie McLeod. She's now our budget
Well, I will, but
coordinator.
I hate
So
to-
Janicia Ruiz is now my assistant. She used to be in code compliance. We love to promote from within, so that's great additions. They're both really great at their positions.
Her out.
Yeah, but
And
do
then
I-
another update we have is our physical location
No,
moved from
you
the
do
annex
it
building
online.
in the City Hall complex
Just
to the
online?
new building that we refer to the one-stop shop
When this
just
gal,
north of
I'm
City
gonna,
Hall.
I can do
So
that.
we are there in the new building. We are very happy to be there. We have meeting room space and space that we actually, didn't have in the annex. And it's a lot more comfortable, I think, for the public too, to come and meet with us and apply for permits and, just do work with us. So we're very happy about that. So that's all the updates that I prepared.
Okay, good. Well, shall we start? It's a good, nice segue into the first question. When you spoke to us a couple of years ago, we talked of as far as a conduit into the city, so as to speak, that it was your request or the direction that the planner be the face for the city. So if residents, the community had comments on a specific project, that would be the contact point, and then they would project manage, so as to speak, to other resources. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's still the case.
Okay. I think, something you said about the recruiting 4 people is Tom Sardarski, if I'm pronouncing his name, he's in an acting consulting role.
Correct. Yeah. Luckily, we were able to get him because he was familiar with our
So what I'm
process.
trying to do is get in my mind a transition from the projects we have now. We have Amy, Tom, and are those, talk to me about the existing planners.
Okay, perfect. So we do have Tom under contract. We don't have an end date. Whenever we get fully staffed, we will have him until then. Amy is moving to Detroit sometime in June. We believe June 11th, next Wednesday, will be her last day. It might be a couple weeks after that. So come the middle of this month to the end of this month, we'll have Rebecca Webster, and we're currently working on a transition plan as far as, what projects Rebecca's going to get. Of course, she has to get trained. Allison's lifting a lot of the load. Tom is taking some of the projects. So we're currently working on a transition, and those weekly updates, reports does have the case planner listed. So if there's ever a question, you can always look at that to see who the case planner is.
I have to ask, if you have when you are fully staffed, do you feel that you are at a staffing level appropriate for the workload?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and these have been open positions, or are these new positions? Some of these.
The 4th planner is a new position that we filled for, it was right during this last hurricane season. She moved from New Jersey and then moved back right after Milton. I think it scared her, yeah. So that position is the new position that we haven't really filled.
Okay. Does anybody want to embroider on or have any further elements to that first question? I think I've been an advocate for you being appropriately staffed for a couple of years now. So happy because the training period.
I could probably do this while this is on.
It's a pretty steep learning curve, and it's critical information. So
definitely
happy to hear what you said.
Definitely. And if I can add one more thing. So one thing I'm looking at, because we have had a challenge filling that 4th position, is having a junior planner or a planner assistant to kind of, we have some zoning staff that are interested in becoming a planner, but they're just not qualified yet. So that could be a stepping stone to keep, that knowledge in-house and to have that longevity in. So hopefully that can help as well.
Pipeline and fail.
Okay. The second question was keeping DSCA informed. I snoop around and look at your weekly report. And I mean that in a good way. But what policies and procedures do you have for the planner, their obligation, for lack of a better word, to reach out to the neighborhoods or when projects come along or when DRC, I mean, at certain milestones, it would seem beneficial that the neighborhood maybe be CC'd on some stuff.
Jackie,
Talk to us about how you see that working.
So the case planner contacts the neighborhood association president or contact person once an application is deemed complete, so before the technical review starts. And so the purpose of that is to introduce a project, introduce
in your
themselves.
first group right now, you have two
And
Since
then
the
following up
endowment
to that, we
is
are
written
going to
along
start
there.
sending the
Bill,
DRC comment
please,
memos
move
to the same association. I learned that that wasn't happening and that should be happening. So hopefully that's a way to keep the associations informed whenever it does go to DRC. And I'm going to make sure that DSCA is included in that. But I would really suggest you can get on the mailing list for the DRC agendas and the planning board agendas. And that's a really great way to keep track of projects that are coming through. And on that agenda, there's a link to the application and the comments. So I use that all the time myself as far as a resource.
One observation is I think others can track things as they go through the DRC. But when there's partial sign off has occurred, then it's kind of a black hole because there's final discussions that administratively that we don't have visibility to. And then as it goes into request for building permits, there is other than you get lucky. I mean, you start looking at building permits issued in the last week. What's a good outcome? What's a good way? What's an appropriate way for neighborhood involvement as DRC is winding down and building permit is getting considered?
Well, I would say there's a couple options. One is that weekly report, which that same information is on our GIS map. So it updates weekly for each project that we're working on. So you could see weekly, how it's progressing. Another option is, again, that DRC comment memo at the very bottom has any updates on partial sign-off projects when they get full sign-off. And then thirdly, once a project is approved, property owners within 500 feet get notified, which we can add on to that, notifying the neighborhood association as well once that decision is made. Because that's one thing that we're not doing right now. It's just the mailing that's going out. I am open for suggestions. I love, getting suggestions. So if anything,
Well,
you have any ideas?
I mean, to be blunt, I mean, there's a DRC approval, and then one would hope when the building permit gets issued, it's consistent with what's been approved. And I'm saying if there was a whoopsie or some, for example, landscape plans. And I don't know how that's, I mean, certain understandings in the DRC and what's approved. And then, and we all know the story about renderings and what is rendered, like on the view and what happened. I'm just looking for a way to, and I'm interested in also tracking the approximate timing on stuff. Right? So.
Yeah, and that I would say that really varies because we have some site plans that never go forward, some site plans that submit their building permit the next day. So that's really hard to tell as far as the tracking of the time and that. I would say that we have the case planner reviews the building permit to keep that consistency. So they do match it with what was approved. We do have the ability to or the applicant has the ability to make some minor modifications, and that's in the code. So, there is that flexibility in there. Anything major would have to go back through the same process as the original approval.
And site plans are supposed to sunset in, is it 2 years?
Yes.
Now, I know storm events and acts of God or stuff, but the normal policy, I know some have sat for 3-4 years before they moved ahead. And I think the developer is constantly asking for
Mhm.
an exception, but your intended policy is to try and stick to 2 years?
Yes, the zoning code allows for 2 years before it expires. The Florida state statute, though, has extended it because of storms and things like that that we have no control over. So that's where you get those extensions up to 4 years and even more.
Anything else in that general area? Okay, the DRC process review. I was part of, and I think you have a group of 8 or 9 folks who ostensibly represent aspects. Kelly's on that group.
Mhm.
Almost 2 months ago to kick that off. And can you talk to us about your goals, the intent, and then where we're at?
Mhm. Yes, thank you. I'm excited to talk about this. So the DRC site plan review, or the DRC process and the site plan requirements haven't been looked at for a while. I think 2009 was the last time it was looked at holistically. We have done quite a few enhancements and improvements in the last few years, but it hasn't been looked at holistically. So that's what we're doing right now. The goal is to improve the process for both, our residents, citizens, our community, as well as, the applicants that we deal with. That's kind of the main general goal, to improve the process. So we started off, we have 2 stakeholder groups. We have a community stakeholder group and I would say developer stakeholder group, for lack of better words. The 2 groups were established with a previous city manager and myself. We wanted a group that is a broad representation of the city. So that's how those 2 groups were, that's how we came up with the two groups. We had an intro meeting to kind of lay out, the goal of the project, the code requirements as they are now, the process as they are now. We're going to do an online survey. We're going to send an online survey in about a week to gather written feedback on our process, our requirements, the experience. There's going to be questions about, input. Is there enough? Is there not enough? Things like that.
Who does the survey go to?
Both of our groups.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So this, the online meeting was the 2 groups, and then the survey will be the 2 groups. And then after that, we'll have meetings with the same 2 groups. We're going to have individual meetings to continue to gather information, gather input, gather suggestions, and then one meeting all together to kind of talk about those. And then after that, I'll, put together some input from what I've heard and present it to our city manager. And then at that point, I'll have to get direction from the city manager. But I do plan on going back to the commission to give them an update and ask for direction, or, we'll have to see what happens at that point.
If you look at what you know about the process and what you've heard and what you even learned in that first meeting, do you sort of know what the 2 or 3 key changes that need to be made to make this thing better, or general areas of improvement?
That's a good question. It really depends who you talk to, because right now I'm getting the extreme opposites. So no, I don't know. Yeah.
Reflect on what those streams are.
Yes. So one, aspect is that we require too much information. It takes too long, too many details, things like that. So we've gotten examples of typically what the county requires, which is usually just a 1-page concept plan. So there's, push for just having that be the requirement to get approval, and then everything else be administrative. And then there's the other side where, more involvement or more time spent, more community engagement and things like that. So kind of those two aspects of it. Yeah.
Well, the elephant in the room, one of the elephants is community workshops.
Mhm.
And DSCA, at the time, the attainable housing bonus ordinances were being implemented 12, 14 months ago,
Mhm.
had, I'm going to use the word compromise, but okay, that although we wanted community workshops more broadly, we said, what if we start with required community workshops when the bonus density benefit is asked for? And the rationale is because of the intensity, 4x, and I'm talking about downtown, 4x the intensity of, and I live in a location with a lot kind of next door. I guess I asked the question, you mean something could be approved administratively on that with 200 dwelling units, 4 times the intensity, and there's no opportunity formally for the community workshop. It was said that failed 4-1, if I'm not mistaken, city commission, or it never went ahead because it was part of a package. Nobody was going to blow up the attainable bonus for that reason. But the argument against that was it was discriminatory, for lack of a better word, that it was it was biased against attainable units. I make the point that it's differentiating, compartmentalizing is different than discrimination. In fact, a recent project, Peter and we advocated for more attainable in a particular unit. So do you have a view on this? I mean, community workshops broadly are on the table and are now being discussed amongst the commissioners, which Commissioner Kelly Aldrich brought it up, and I don't remember if Jen did or not. It was actually came up at the chamber meeting this morning incorrectly. So it's a coming as an issue. Does your group have a view on this?
We don't. I have heard that you can't, and I believe our city attorney's opinion is that because of Senate Bill 250, you can't add that as a requirement right now. But as far as my department goes, because we implement the code, so if a community workshop is required before, during, after, it's just the process that will follow. My personal belief, I love community involvement, so the more we can get out there, the better. I do have some ideas of involving the community once we get fully staffed more, even though it's not, it could be not a requirement, but, I do have some ideas of that engagement.
Because I think it is the view of DSCA that ultimately community workshops save time, done at the appropriate point. They are conducted by the developer now. The cost was estimated by Joel Freeman at $5,000, which is, a super rounding error in the grander scheme of things. And it continues, I think. I hope I'm speaking for us, that community workshops save time, money, effort, and heartburn.
Lucia,
Does anybody
can you hear me?
add to that? Or?
Shit. Can you hear me? No.
My own personal feeling is that the earlier your workshop is, the better, because the developer hasn't spent a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources developing a plan that somebody asks them to change later on and costs more. My weatherman is talking. And so what I did with the 777 South Palm project was that as soon as I found out about it, I got in touch with Kinley Horn, and who eventually put me in touch with Unilog, the developer. And after the DRC meeting this morning, I had a chance to sit down with the two principals of Unilog, and we had about an hour's discussion about things that people are interested in the community, what they would like. I talked about trees, for example. And I thought it was very helpful, but I think the farther into the process you get, the more difficult it gets, the more resistance you create, both on the part of the developer and the public. And that's not good. Is that good for us as a community
Mhm.
to have that happen? So I would encourage you, if this develops into a thing, that it be done early, as early in the process as feasible.
Mhm.
You know, one thing, Ken, at the master plan committee meeting, when they, I don't know if you watched when they were doing the historical review
Okay, yeah.
of, I thought that was really, really interesting. One thing that seems to have not changed in 25 years is Duane, and I wasn't around, talked about the pedestrian experience, the public realm
Mhm.
as being central. And I think what we're saying is that hasn't changed. And focus on right-of-way treatments and
Mhm.
getting into that, and the problematic elements when utility lines need to be relocated or we're kind of dead. So the frustration, Will, is I think we may all want the same thing of better public realms, better trees, treatments, reasonably, sidewalks and that kind of thing. But in totality here, because of the complexity of, say, utility lines,
Mhm.
we get, it's not an integrated, holistic view of things. And it appears to us at times that nobody's in charge. That it's not exactly your department, it's not exactly planning's, it's not exactly public works or utilities. What do you have, I hope I'm making sense.
Mhm.
Do you have thoughts on how things can be a better whole?
As far as, because if we don't, like, let's say, for example, if a utility line is in a sidewalk and you can't plant a tree there because of the utility line, if we don't have anything requiring a developer to move that, then we can't make them move that, if we don't have any code requirements to do that. So I think that's where our hands are tied as well.
Well, but at the same time, that developer may be asking for adjustments.
Mhm.
Let me use the words horse trading.
Mhm.
I mean, the adjustments are discretionary, and you may approve adjustment to pick a number, 20%. But is it not reasonable to think about if a developer's asking for 3 adjustments and to make, things work for trees, we need to move the water line. We have a little understanding, shall we say?
I would say I have to stick to my criteria. And my criteria, I can't step away from my criteria. So because I see an improvement here, I can't hold their adjustments until that improvement gets done.
Is
If
that
I can
like
tie
a
it to the
legal issue?
criteria, yes.
But if you have the develop, it seems to me for a developer to get people to be on board with their project, the more they got the community involved up front,
Mhm.
makes the project go easier where we're getting, 4-to-1 or 5 total improvement
Mhm.
of it, because they cooperated up front. And it
Mhm.
seems like to me that and the developer is actually, it benefits the developer to get on board earlier than later.
Can I give you an example
agree.
of how that's a good idea this morning? When I was talking to the principals, they were talking about things they would like to do. They would love to do the project. And one of them turned out to be an art project. And since I'm on the board of the Arts and Cultural Alliance, we have now started a conversation with him about what he wants to do and how we might be able at the Alliance to help with the project. So, it might add some pizzazz to a project
Mhm.
if the developer can talk to us early on and say, well, this is one of my funny ideas I have about this project.
Mhm.
See if we can't help make it happen.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, great points.
Okay, the next item is, and I'm going to use, like you and I were talking earlier, the federal grant for the Boulevard of the Arts and 10th project. Apparently the check has arrived. I mean, it maybe is escrow with FDOT, but the federal government has issued the check and it's in somebody's bank account. So the Boulevard of the Arts and 10th project are going to be moving forward, on what timetable, I don't know. I did talk to Nick Patel the other day, and what I want to focus on is we've got 10th is all east of 41, the work. Boulevard of the Arts is east and west of 41. And may we talk about just west of Boulevard of the Arts, because that gets more complicated. I think arguably that stretch is one of the more beautiful streets currently in the city, and I don't think we want to mess that up. We have one park condo project moving ahead. We have Hyatt. I think you just confirmed the rumor I held that demo may start there in September on the Hyatt garage or whatever portion of it. Nick, as I understand it, the developer is to pay for the complete street right-of-way improvements at both One Park and Hyatt.
That's my understanding.
So that's good news, right? The rest of the money can be used that way. I don't, there are some concerns, for lack of a better word, between the exact what's coming down the pike. And we're curious of what approval mechanisms, how does that work with the DRC or with the landscaping component of it? In total, for example, we could, 2 different site plans or 3 different buildings occurring. I'm saying this badly, but there are some concerns about the treatment there. How are you folks involved in this process?
As far as making sure the streetscape matches with these new projects, or I'm not really understanding the question.
I'm looking for a vision of the street, not, just so we have the whole is considered along with the pieces.
So it's my understanding that the engineering division is managing the design of the street and making sure that the projects meet that design together, and with the 60% plans or however far they are along with it. So our responsibility would be to make sure that engineering is okay with what is being proposed and making sure that that matches with the plan, the overall plan.
Okay, I'm not as familiar with, the exact plans. Patrick, anybody have any questions, comments on that?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of that. First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for the work of your department, and especially trying to do work when you don't have staff. So yes, there's an outstanding question: is what is the status of the site plan
For the Hyatt?
for the Hyatt, based upon the streetscape that is proposed to remove 100% of the trees and replace it with 20%. That really ends up being a 10% replacement, and is going to take 25, 35, 40 years before it'll grow back to where the residents have the same canopy coverage and tree benefits as specified in the comprehensive plan that says, here's all the benefits you get from trees. So why would the public have to be deprived of 20 plus years of foliage benefits according to a site plan that is based upon engineering department, not the developer? The developer isn't proposing that. So how is that going to get resolved?
Good question. I'm actually still looking into your email, and that's why I haven't responded back yet. But the site plan is on hold right now. We did hear from the applicant that they're looking at making some adjustments to the parking. I don't think it's going to impact the right of way or anything that we're talking about here, but that's why it's kind of on hold right now while I look into this. But my understanding right now, and I still would like a little bit more time to look into it, but as far as it's kind of a combination of the streetscape following the plan, the the complete street plan, and also some of those trees not being healthy. So our arborist does have an opinion as far as the removal and the replacement and the benefit of that. So I'm still gathering that information, but I think in this case, it's kind of it's a two-way, or it's for two reasons. One, that streetscape plan, that's much larger than just this project. And then also the health and the longevity of some of those trees that are there now.
I heard those words, that the trees were old. And removing something because it's old doesn't sit well with many seniors in Sarasota, especially for what, 40 or 50-year-old live oaks that live to be 250 years old. Okay, so those live oaks on Boulevard of the Arts, from a live oak perspective, do not appear to be old. Now, whether any of those trees, all of those trees, if they need to be moved to make the sidewalk wider, the palms could simply be picked up, moved over, new holes dug, amended soil put in, and replanted. All of those trees could be replanted, be healthy and create that without having to remove them and put in 3-inch trees, saplings. So that's where the concern is, that it's a wholesale destruction and it's a 20, 30-year growback.
Yes.
So that's concerns.
So
We
we've
need
got
to address that.
And I think from an overarching standpoint, as we talked about what a beautiful street this is, and we are going to have it canyoning, for lack of a better word, beautiful park. So, and it's probably the last development's amongst the last in the quay. So we got one chance to get it right, and we've got some time to do it. So I think we would request, or let's work together on this. I think there's some solutions.
Yes, no, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I am looking at it, but I would say that we do have pretty strict criteria for tree removal, so it being old is not one criteria. It has to be diseased, and sometimes you can't see that, but I will get back to you with more details, and, we'll see what we can do.
According to the site plan application, none of those live oaks were listed as anything other than good condition. None of the royal palms were listed in anything other than good. There wasn't anything listed. There was a few other ones listed as poor, but they weren't the ones in the right of way that really add to that. So that's where I think there's an area for review. Just real quickly on your other issues about updates of the DRC process and so forth, it is still two big problems. One, to find out once a site application is approved, it then goes into the construction planning process and staging plans. We're told now that we still have to go to the city clerk to request staging plans and to request MOTs. They're not available on the website. So I was told that when I called Development Services, I was told we had to go through city clerks. So if that's changed, that would be great to have something, updates telling us how we can receive the full copies of the complete staging plan, not the cursory information that's on the GIS, the complete staging plans with maps and narrators, and then all details on MOTs. Those should be available for downloading from the website, but they're still not available. We're told we have to go to the clerk's office.
So our permitting division intakes all the building permits and staging plans. The clerk has nothing to do with building permits. So you would contact the permitting division, for staging plans. But I will look into other options for this to make it a little bit easier.
Could it not be made available on eDocs on the Granicus?
That's for development applications and other types of applications, not the building permit. So I'll have to see how that transition would work.
Silos, everything's being siloed. I'm saying from the public perspective, and it'd be available on the website.
And I'll look into that.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just one point about the whole things along the Boulevard of the Arts? That is, we're spending, what, $500 million developing the bay? And this is a key part to the entry of the bay. And I don't know if there's, some extra added, well, we're only zoning because we can do a 3-inch tree, and that's what the rules say. If there's a way to go in and say, this is a special project, or this is a special situation where we can be a little more grand to match what they've done literally across the street in what they've done to develop the bay, because they're wanting it to look beautiful from the get-go. And that same kind of effort needs to be done across the street. So that is something that, you know, I won't say an extraordinary thing, but, you know, we're putting all of this money into developing the bay, and to have one side of the street look one way and the other side of the street looks completely different does not make any sense. And it should be kind of included as a full-on package. And I think that's a reason for a variation of the rules. There's a rule that says you can only replace it with a 3-inch tree. I'm just using that as an example.
Folks, this has been great. Are there any final, please, I hope not, comments, questions, observations?
On Zoom? Anyone on Zoom?
Do we have any?
Raise their hand on Zoom?
Can you hear me?
Is there, Peter Blanton, our board member, is on Zoom. Peter, you have any comments?
Well, I'll make it fast. I have 2 comments.
You switch to gallery view?
Can you hear me?
Can you put it on gallery to see who's on Zoom?
Peter, can you hear me? You can't hear me.
Peter, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So 2 comments. One for Lucia. One is you may want to think about using AI if you don't already use it. It does seem like a lot of your work is like paralegal work, which is increasingly being used, relying on AI. The second comment is, I know you're listening to developers and community organizers, but I think you should also look at what the neighboring towns and cities in Florida do. So I have done a survey, which I sent to the city commission and also the ad hoc committee, the downtown Sarasota 2020 ad hoc committee, looking at the use of administrative approvals in about 15 other towns and cities in Florida. So I will send that to you, but I think we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. We can look what other people do in Florida. And we stand alone, by the way, in the broad nature, the broad application of administrative review. As you'll see when I send it to you, every other town and city says, well, if it's more than 50 units, if it's greater than X height, if it involves something beyond the code, if it involves density housing, et cetera, then it has to have public hearings and public approvals. I'll send you that, but that's, you know, our town doesn't look at data. It doesn't look at every other city and town and county in Florida to see what they do. It's frustrating, but it's out there and it's easy to access. But I'll send it to you. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. I would love to see that. Can I mention something?
Yeah.
Sorry. So I definitely agree with not reinventing the wheel and using AI. We're starting to use AI citywide. We're going to have a co-pilot pretty soon here, hopefully. We did look at other jurisdictions as far as the site plan requirements. So I do plan on having that be a part of this whole, package, seeing what other people do, talking to other directors stuff around the state. So I would appreciate any research that you've done, but I, trust me, do not want to reinvent any wheels that I don't have to. So thank you for that.
I just quickly throw out there, Lucy, I just sent it to you with Peter Blanton.
Oh, thank you. Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
folks, I think we're kind of out of time. Lucia, we certainly appreciate your time, and
Thank you.
I hope the format worked for you. It was a different way of doing it, and we appreciate it. We've got some follow-up. I'm sure I will get some cards and letters, some suggestions. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And so what you and your group try and do. And we want to be a positive part of that process.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Okay.
Thank you.